Y'all planning for this?
Hello, TPR Nation. This is Jamie Shalansky in an episode of Worlds to Conquer, and we're going to continue talking about family firms, not family offices where you have a financial advisor servicing a select group of families that they work with, but instead the real nitty-gritty, an actual family office filled with real family members. And to continue this conversation today, I have my son, Lane Wild, with me, and we're just going to talk about what it's like to grow up in a family office and kind of your hopes, dreams. So why don't we kick this off like we normally start all of our conversations? What's your 5-year plan?
Oh, man.
And by the way, I ask all of his friends that too when they come through the door. What's your 5-year plan? What are your goals? What's your hopes and dreams? Where are we headed?
Oh, yeah. The big Saturday question. My 5-year plan to become a master at compliance. That's a bit of a loaded response.
But don't worry, everyone. Don't get turned off yet. You say compliance and it's like talking to your CEO. We're all like, oh no, run away.
Run away. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So a little background on Lane. Lane today, when we record this, is age 21. He went to public school all through elementary and junior high school. And then about the time he went to high school, we decided as a family to homeschool him. I remember going down to register him at his high school, and it was just the most distracting, loudest scene I had ever witnessed. You literally had like a big truck pull up on the curb with blaring music, a girl in booty shorts walking in, and I sat down with your counselor and tried to get you in all these AP classes that you had qualified for. But he said, no, sorry, the best we could do is probably guitar. And I was like, what? This is terrible. This is never going to work academically for him. And so we made the decision to homeschool him during high school. But Lane, is it okay if I share why we decided to homeschool you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So Lane is very handsome. He's very charismatic. And he takes after his parents, and he's got a great personality, very likable. And when we went into the high school, we saw the social scene, and my spouse and I figured he would be an absolute popular kid that got in a ton of trouble and had a plethora of girlfriends and no academic knowledge whatsoever by the time he graduated. So we pumped the brakes and pulled him back in. It's funny because most parents, we laugh about it because most parents homeschool their kids because they're afraid of them getting picked on. And we homeschooled our kid because we didn't want him to become prom king. And it gave us the flexibility to travel, right? And to sculpt your academic schedule. And so because we did that, we made that choice. Lane had all 4 years of high school laid out in front of him, and he decided himself to hit the gas pedal, and he graduated high school by the age of 16, and he was already enrolled in university classes. Did you get a choice to go to college?
Yes and no.
Very well elaborate.
I had a 50-50 laid out in front of me. There was, on one end, I could go to college, get a degree, because a degree shows you have the drive and the ability to finish something that you set yourself to. And the other 50 it was a really big argument, I think, for me wanting to originally become a content creator, not for the right reasons, because it looked like something that was just easy to play video games with. And you said, if I can make that a success story and I actually start doing it, you would not make me finish college. But I don't think I ever made a single video.
I don't think so either. We did a lot of practice videos, but well, it's, kind of like what I grew up telling you, like, especially because your generation, like, you all see these influencers and you all see these YouTubers and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to do that, right? And they make it look so easy. But when you sat down, it was like, okay, now I got to learn everything about video editing. Now I got to learn everything about marketing and how do I, get clickbait that's appropriate and what audiences do I want to reach? And it was a much bigger business model and an endeavor than you wanted to take on, Oh
yeah. The how do I start is probably the biggest deterrent for the majority of people that consider it. That's where you start.
Where do you start is why most entrepreneurs fail, right? Because they got a great idea. They think they can do something better than someone else, but they don't put in the work to build a business model to make it successful. And so this, you've heard this 1,000 times, is it the little girl that likes horses, or is she the little girl that mucks stalls on her time off, right? And that tells you the difference between the person that's going to put in the work and the one that just wants to sit on top of a horse, right? And that was the same thing. You wanted to be a YouTube influencer and you didn't want to go to college. And I said, okay, you've got to make this a viable career. Here's everything it takes for you to go make that happen. And it's in your corner, right? So at 16, I didn't let him drop out of college. And that was a battle between the two of us, because about your, sophomore year, junior year, you were like, forget this, especially because I don't think the academia was rigorous enough for you. I think you are naturally intelligent and you are fiercely charismatic. And sometimes you get away with a little bit too much, right?
Yes. I think the school scene did not benefit me as much as college, or with the idea of college, because it was never putting forth the effort. It sounds so narcissistic to say that. It's putting forth the effort. It was never a challenge when you're introduced with the work, and it's as simple as you're able to do the homework they assign you, or these tests and everything in this record time, and you're just sitting there throughout the class because you're waiting on everybody else. You're not learning from it. Right. It's not a place where you can individually grow. You grow as a class. And if you have an insanely intelligent student, and you have myself, another intelligent student, and then you have someone who might not know the content because they just haven't had that experience yet,
absolutely.
You're growing with them, which is still perfectly fine because you don't want to leave anybody behind, but you're prohibiting the growth of those two students that could potentially go even further.
I think that's the biggest challenge with our school system right now, right? Is you teach to the lowest common denominator, and that's a terrible thing to have to admit, verbally, but it inhibits kids that could go further faster, right?
Right.
Because not everyone has the same aptitude, right? You can't judge a fish by how well it flies.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and it does. I think it did a couple things for the homeschooling system to it. Also, I think it made it a bit more popular. And I also think that it gave parents the opportunity to learn with their children, because they have to know what they're teaching, and they become the teachers. And the only con that I potentially saw that came out of that was when they're going to school, usually the people that are teaching have a degree in teaching. So they know what they're teaching because or how to teach it, I should say.
Oh, for sure, right?
And all the moms and dads out there that do homeschool, it's awesome that they're willing to, and that you guys do that kind of thing.
But you don't know everything.
Time, exactly. There's certain stuff that you're not going to know. So
I just learned at the age of 42 that Mountain Dew, baking soda, and salt glow in the dark like a glow stick. So I'm not a scientist. Clearly, I'm not going to know all of these different, things to teach you. And our program had some good resources, but you're right, we're not an expert in every subject, right? And but it did afford us the opportunity that we could sculpt your education a little bit to more what we wanted. As you know, it was really, really important to me that you learned about theology, and that's not something that's taught in a lot of public schools anymore. And it was imperative to me personally that you had a worldly view of different religions.
Yes, to give the viewers a little bit of insight into Jamie's drive in getting me to learn what she and I want to know about. She managed to not only create, but implement a course into my entire school, which when we say homeschooling, it's I think it's also considered vocational schooling.
It's a hybrid, yeah.
Right. There is a school you can attend. And so she created this class, and it not only got approved, but issued as almost a required course, and ended up being my favorite class. And she waited until I graduated college to tell me she was the one that made it. So after I'm giving it all this praise and everything, and our big arguments about college, she's like, well, I created your favorite class. And I was like, darn it.
So not only that, but it kind of led you into the degree you chose, right? Because one of the conversations that we had is, you have through osmosis, gosh, not even osmosis, probably just like direct saturation, is you've learned a lot about finances. You grew up knowing about finances. Did you feel like anything was handed to you as you grew up?
No.
That you had more money than other people?
Absolutely not. It was because I had the knowledge of money. It's you're not just given money. I was given insight on how to make money. that story. Give a man a fish, he eats for a day. Teach a man to fish, he eats for the rest of his life. I mean, I was never handed money. It wasn't something that I was just given to go do whatever I want.
But I'm thinking of your first business, the lawn service, you know? Yeah. And so in our neighborhood, you know, because we live in middle America, and so his lawn service business, we had set it up, and my spouse was like, I'm so proud, blah, blah, blah. And Lane was getting his lawnmower out. He was getting the rake. I mean, he did a whole package, right? Like a spring cleanup package. He had 3 different choices for people to choose from. He even had a business partner at one time, right? One of the neighborhood kids.
I did.
So you got to learn about partnership responsibility, one person pulling their weight, one person slacking off, etc. And when he got done with his first job, we sat down and I said, okay, time to pay for renting the equipment. And my spouse was like, what are you talking about? And Lane's like, what do you mean? I was like, you didn't buy that lawnmower.
Gotta pay for the use.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, to show you his drive, he in one summer, gosh, would you make $2,200? I mean,
Oh, more than that. I made 35 to $4,000 because I was able to buy that computer.
yeah, because he wanted Lane, to my great annoyance, is a gamer. He's a very big gamer, and it drives me absolutely out of my mind. Like, if we didn't have a TV in the house at all, I would be fine. But Lane loves gaming, and that's a huge part of his personality. So whenever he wanted to upgrade, because he's a PC gamer, not a console, so he had to purchase that. And if you're a gamer out there, you know we're not talking a couple $100. These are thousands of dollars, and you build your own, right? Like you had to build your own machine.
Yep. And it's also a really humbling experience when you learn how much a certain product costs based off of its name alone.
Yeah.
I wanted Alienware because it glowed and had an alien head on it. And it was over $1,500 more than what it would have cost to buy the same specs, the same specifications for any other computer. Yeah, that was off-brand. Or the one that I built myself.
Yeah,
So.
after the Alienware, you built your own and then ended up saving thousands of dollars, right? Because you didn't go. And of course, that wasn't just a, Lane, you could have made a cheaper option. Growing up in our house, that was a whole lesson, right? It was like, oh, sit down, look at the components. Where did this manufactured? Where did this come from? What's the supply chain? You know? And so we're like saturated in economics is an understatement, probably. So you didn't have a financial hand up. Right. Well, maybe you did have a hand up. You didn't have a hand out.
Knowledge of finance, yes. Physically getting money, no. That was not something I was just given. It was earned.
And as far as like ambition as a 21-year-old, where do you see yourself on a 1 to 10? 10 being me, and 0 being a corpse.
I think with my ambition, I'd rank myself an 8 or a 9. The only reason I don't think I'd qualify myself as a 10 as yourself, I think ambition is something that is not only related to the workplace. It's everything you do in life you're ambitious about. To put you into perspective, if it's something as simple as helping the family achieve a goal when it's business related, getting it done, laying out the process, you're one of the first people to go and help. And then when it becomes more of a personal aspect, setting goals for yourself, watching you achieve those, growing up is arguably one of the biggest reasons I'm able to set my own goals, because not only were you coming to me asking me every Saturday what my 5-year plan was, I got to watch you chase your dreams and make them a reality because you have the ambition to set forth and move on anything that you want to move forward on.
Yeah.
And with that said, I don't know if I have all of that just yet. So I've got the business down, but personally,
but it wasn't just what's your 5-year plan, right? And so so it's funny because Lane is very introverted, and we display our energy different, wouldn't you say?
Yes.
And so like I am like intense, the fast, like this is probably the slowest that I've ever talked on this podcast because I'm trying to be very intentional, not to like overwhelm you. But I have super high energy and I'm like, go, 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 get it done, get it done, get it done. Right. And your energy is like that, silent. Like it's just very silent energy, right?
Background energy.
Yes, and sometimes I even look at him and I'm like, oh my gosh, Lane, if you could move backwards, I swear you would through time. But we had to meet in the middle, right? Like I have to bring my energy down, and you have to and you are actually really, really mature about this for your age, because when I'm driving too hard, too fast on something, you will respectfully give me pushback and you say, listen, I love you very much. I understand you want my best, but this is where I'm at and this is what I'm already doing. And I might not be doing it in the way or the manner you want, but I am moving forward towards my goals. And when you do that, it triggers in me. I'm like, oh, step back, right? Like, I'm not expecting you to be my replica, right? But I am expecting you to be kind, to be honest, and to be hardworking, right? Those are my expectations. And so as you were growing up, one of the things that's different between the two of us is like me growing up, I always knew I was going to be in the firm, right? I mean, that was like, you're going to run the company, you're going to run multiple companies. That is where you are headed, right? Mm-hmm. And that was good for me because that's who I am, right? But it also didn't give me, I didn't feel like I also had a lot of choices, right? I didn't have any exposure to anything else necessarily. And so all paths led there. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that I did not want for you. I did not want for you to feel you were limited or that you couldn't see anything else. I didn't want you to have tunnel vision only towards the company. And I also think it's really, really important that you go work for somebody else, right? You go see other environments. You go see how they operate. Because when you do that, and you've had this experience where you go, I don't understand why they don't implement X, Y, and Z, right? And they don't even know what that X, Y, and Z is, and you do because you've been exposed to so many conversations that we've had about the company.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it creates some of the biggest arguments I have with past managers that I've ever worked under is I have these ideas I want to bring forward, and sometimes they don't fit the company, which is absolutely fine. Their business model is different from mine, and what they want to do is what they want to do. But when it does benefit the company and it's overlooked because it's not something that's understood, instead of gulping down that pride and asking for a better understanding of it, it's, well, we don't want to make this work. And it's really painful because later on I'll see it implemented because it was someone else's idea brought up in a different way. And that's always the most painful part.
Yeah.
But
and I think that's one thing that I would say all the grandkids that work, that are of the age that they can work, struggle with is that you think like owners, you think like leaders, but you have not earned the right to speak like an owner and speak like a leader, right?
Absolutely.
And so, I mean, you and I, we've had several conversations where you've come back from work and you're just like, I'm really frustrated with leadership and this is what's happening. And I've had to tell you, suck it up, put your hand in your hand, and you go in and apologize, and you ask them how you can improve, right?
Yeah. And I think it helps me as well because I'm not always right. There's
Oh, for sure.
I'm sometimes right, but sometimes, and most of the time, I actually get humbled by the management, which is a huge learning experience for me because in the environment I've grown up in, when we introduce ideas, they're welcomed, but if they're wrong, we're just told flat out. With management, sometimes they don't do that. So they'll kind of like guide you. They're trying to be nice about it. But getting humbled by management is arguably what helps me achieve the best me in that company. Because when I join a company, my goal is to lead. So when I move forward, I'm making sure that I'm driving not only myself, but that the team is following me. And I did not earn that in that company, and I don't have that capability. So when I approach management and they're like, hey, this is kind of overstepping here, I don't see it until they set it forward. Yeah. Once they set it forward, having that respect to know what they brought up and that it is truthful and that I need to follow that, I think is one of the biggest pros to working under different employers versus just directly going into the company or the firm is that I get the opportunity to not work just under family and be told, hey, this is wrong. I'm being told by a complete stranger, hey, you need to humble yourself. You're moving a little fast. Yeah, you're overtaking what my job is.
And that's difficult with you because you are very intelligent. And I heard this, and I think I sent it to you as a meme. It said, if you want something done fast, give it to a lazy person because they'll get it done so fast because they don't want to do it. Right? They'll find the least amount of steps possible to get something done, right? Don't give it to a perfectionist because they'll make it 3 times longer than it has to be. Give it to a lazy person because they just want to hurry up and get it done. And so I sent it to Lane because I'm always harassing him how lazy he is because he doesn't show energy the same way I show it, and he's not lazy as a person. But he did graduate from university with a degree in history, and that was a conversation we had whether or not he should have a financial degree. He thought about minoring, if he should double major, etc. And I told him, I said, in high school, like the whole time you're growing up in elementary, junior, and high school, you are told what to think, right? But when you go to university, you learn how to think, right? Why and how to think. And so I didn't care if you had a degree in economics or finance, because if later in life you did decide to go into finance or enter into the company, I'm going to reteach you everything anyway, right? Like none of that is going to apply on the collegiate level. Maybe some basic principles in economics, but you have those. And so I wanted you to go to university for something that you were passionate about. And that ended up being theology and history. And you were able to graduate at age 21. And then he did get a job at a bank that he earned on his own. I did not get him any favors, right? And so he got a job at the bank. And what I am most proud of you when you started at the bank, he had worked previously for another employer, which was really, really hard on him. But I think taught you a lot of really good learning lessons.
I think leaving my previous employer
before the bank
was a fantastic decision, but I think it was a fantastic decision because I had worked for them for 3 or 4 years at that point. I learned as much as they were going to teach me.
Yeah. So Lane had worked for 4 years in like a arcade center for adults. So the kind that has the go-karts and the laser tag and all these arcade games, a pretty big center. I think it's like 20,000 square feet. It's pretty big. But he had started right above janitor, and kind of worked his way up into management. But that may have proven to be one of the hardest jobs you ever had. So, yes. And why is that?
That was the hardest job I ever had because in my head, when you join a company, it's all about loyalty. One of the major things that you have to have when you're working for someone in order to actually give them your all is the loyalty to that company. Knowing that they are who you said you're going to work for or with, and that you are going to give them your all is huge. And that was one of my main things is it's as much a pro as it is a con, because when you're extremely loyal to a company, they can do a lot to you that they wouldn't be able to do to a bunch of other people, and you will still stick with them and they know it. And I think that starting out, it was really, really nice because I got to prove that as a kid, I could still do what all the adults were doing and kind of move forward off that. And, I mean, as a 16-year-old kid joining into the workforce, it's obviously there's going to be some looking at you and saying like, oh, this is your first real job. This is your first professional job.
What'd your grandma teach you about your first job?
You should hate it.
Why?
Because you don't want to stay. It's not where you should stay.
Did you learn that there?
Yes, very much so.
Because that's something you kids would always argue with her about, right? Like, why would you hate your first job? Why would you hate it? You should have fun when you go to work, right? And
she was very, very right. She was correct in that. And when we were there, and as I was moving up through management, or just through the different departments, compensation is a big thing for many employees. I was lucky.
That's why you work, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's why you're working.
You got to make money. And chasing money is never a good idea, but getting compensated for the effort you're putting in is always something that, I look at.
Yeah, for sure.
Mentally, you can't really put a comparison unless you're using numbers on it, but putting a comparison on how much work you put in or how much effort you put into how much you're getting out of that company, I think is a really big aspect of that previous employer for me, because I moved through every single department. I helped technology, the IT team, working on fixing the machines, programming them. When we got this new VR machine, helping them fix that and work that, then standing there and working that for 4 hours at a time because there was nobody that could fill that. Working in the laser tag, the racing,
redemption, all of it, right?
Everything, every aspect of it. And becoming a slight manager of all of it and kind of working directly under the general manager, making sure all the management in each department was taken care of. There wasn't an increase in income for that. There was no increase in my pay from working.
So over years or advancing.
Right.
Like you but okay, so you didn't get a raise.
Right.
Did you ask for one?
Absolutely, multiple times.
How did you ask?
The first time I brought it up.
Matters.
It absolutely matters. And the first time I brought it up, I didn't bring it up correctly. I said, hey, I'm just curious. This is what I'm getting paid. I noticed that I got one of the most memorable experiences for me involving raises was when we were going through, I think it was after a year of being there, every single employee got a raise. And we were told that we were all getting the same raise. And so when we looked at it, there were almost every employee got $1 raise. I noticed myself, all I got was 50 cents. I wasn't making more than any other employee. In fact, now I was making less than the majority of employees.
Right.
And
this is after 4 years of being there.
This was after
multiple departments,
right.
and being a GM.
I think this specific one was after 1 to 2 years.
Working under the GM.
Yeah, and I think this specific one, this was one of the first ones for me. And when that happened, I had gone up to the management and I said, hey, just out of curiosity, I noticed that it was brought to my attention that some people were getting $1 raises. I was curious why mine was 50 cents. And I didn't ask the right questions, so I got the wrong answers. And they said, well, your family's rich. And that was a real kick in the face because it's not, you can have a rich family and not make any money in yourself. I mean, it's goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I was never given money. I was taught how to earn it. And when I learned how to earn it, I tried setting that forward and getting told that because my family makes money that I don't get any of and I don't see that money, I'm not going to get more because there are people in harder predicaments. And I absolutely understand that the man with the child needs to have the money to pay for that child. But at the same time, do I need to have a kid to be appreciated? Is that where this mindset should be set? Should I have my own family and have lived through a struggle so that I can get that extra 50 cents? Because that doesn't make sense to me. And why am I getting beat down for someone else's life choice kind of deal? But I'm really, really appreciative of that experience because I got to later when a similar experience happened. I can't for the life of me remember what the monetary amount was, but another raise went around and I got 3 cents. And I was really, really torn about that because it was significantly less than anybody else was making. And at that point, that was at the 4 years. That's when I was working quite literally under the general manager, checking every department. I was making less.
You plugged all the overtime.
Every day that someone wasn't available, I filled that department. And I was making less than.
So anytime there was a call out, you were the first one they called to get in. You were the most dependable. Yeah.
And I was making less than employees that had literally just started a week ago.
And not only making less, but being specifically told because your family has money.
Yeah. And I don't think that getting paid the same amount as someone else should be a good comparison, but knowing the amount, it goes back into what I was saying, knowing the amount of effort you put in versus the amount of money you're getting back. People that have been there a week are not putting in nearly as much as I put in for 4 years. Why?
Yeah, they got to earn it.
Where is that? Absolutely, you have to earn that. You got to show value. And I feel I had shown value and wasn't getting rewarded for it. And that time I brought it to management. It was arguably one of the biggest reasons I ended up leaving the company because I had to swallow that loyalty and admit defeat. And
the manager patted you on the head.
Yep. I got patted on the head. And when I brought this one to management, I said, hey, what can I do to earn this amount? What can I do to get this raise for the future? Tell me where I'm struggling.
When you came home that first time and I said, why would you go ask for a raise just because other people got it? Yep. You need to go ask what you need to do to earn a raise.
Absolutely. And so I had a pen and paper. I brought it up and I said, can you please write down for me what I need to achieve?
What I gotta improve.
Where do I need to improve to deserve this raise? And I got stared at, ignored, and waved off. And then when I brought it back up, I got patted on the head. And it was at that point I decided it was a good idea to leave that company, which, like I said, it taught me a lot, but it also gave me the biggest sense of relief knowing that I now understood what the mentality was when someone says you're rich or you're not getting this raise because of this reason. Dirty. Oh, absolutely. It feels so dirty. And it made me understand why that was happening, though. I think it's not a jealousy thing, it's an envy thing. And so when you have these certain areas and some management, I genuinely believe they don't realize that they're hurting that person. I think they look at the situation and it's a hard decision and they see that guy that's struggling with his wife and kids.
Yep. And they said, you need the money, you don't.
Absolutely.
Right?
And then they see that 17-year-old kid that's not paying rent.
And there's a lot of people that talk about wage inequality because of that. Because
absolutely.
It's not about what you're earning and your merit and your value. It's about somebody else's opinion of what you need. You know?
So I don't think it would be right for me to say I hate that company or management because it's a hard call.
Yeah.
Having those experiences has helped improve me.
100%. And Lane, the first time I got called rich, I will never forget it because it stopped me in my tracks. And they were saying it like a slur, right? And I was little. God, I was probably like 10. And they were like, not everyone's like you, Jamie. Not everyone's family is rich. And we had a very nice house, right? We always had a roof over our head. We had clothes on our back. We had food on the table. But we were also up on Saturday morning at 7 a.m. to go to the hockey swap to get used gear, to be the first in line. Mm-hmm. I always joke I was 7 years out of fashion because my older sister is 7 years older than I am. So, we didn't have an extravagant lifestyle because especially as Grandma and Poppy were hustling, everything went back to the company. Everything, right? And you're trying to create and create and create. And I'm not trying to take away and saying we were so impoverished or we had it so worse than a lot of people. But it really drove home other people's. And I think this is what keeps us all, the whole Shalansky family, pretty humble about it, because you don't want other people thinking a certain way about you, and so you keep your finances private, you keep this private, and you remember where you came from.
Absolutely.
Right. So Lane left that job and got offered another one, started as a member service representative, customers like a teller. And I was really happy to see you in that position because it was entry level. But when you were sitting down, I don't know if you remember this, but you were sitting down, you were like, okay, you were making so much more money than you had at this minimum wage job where you were getting 3-cent raises, 50-cent raises over 4 years, right? Mm-hmm. You got 53-cent increase in pay over 4 years.
Over 4 years, yeah.
Yes. And so you got this new job and you were making more money than you ever had, but you were like, okay, I want to move out. I want to buy a car. I want to do all of these things. And you had a goal. You're like, I want to get to 6 figures. How do I get to 6 figures, right? Mm-hmm. And you were kind of obsessed about it, right? About about how much you were making hourly, right?
Mm-hmm. And it was a huge obsession. I was doing that math every day.
Every day. I was like, what is changing on hours? There's still 24 in the day, So, but you were trying to figure out, how do I make more money, right? Because you just had this horrific experience. And so do you remember what I told you? Stop concentrating about money. Start trying to find a way to add
value.
Yep, 100%, right? And I think for a lot of advisors that are coming into this business, stop chasing money. Stop having commission breath. Stop looking for products to sell. Stop targeting big clients that have multi-million dollars. Add value. Add value. And if you find a way to add value, money finds you, right? And so you spent a year and a half learning everything about that bank possible. I mean, you got to the point where, whether you were in the safe, right, doing vault deposits, you worked with IT, you went around to different member service, you were doing over 60 loan applications a week during the pandemic, right? You learned everything you could about credit and lending, right? Mm-hmm. And then did that pay off? Did that finding the value?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was really refreshing to see because I was an MSR while I was searching
mm-hmm.
for money. I was. And MSRs are greatly appreciated. Tellers, I think they're, the kind of stigmatism is that it's the beginning entry-level job, but it's also one of the hardest.
Oh, yeah. You have all the members, right? Yeah. You have all the customers all the time.
Everybody that's angry and doesn't want to say it over
mm-hmm.
the phone and wants to bring it to the front, they're going to the people that just started out.
Line.
Oh, yeah. What is the transaction? Mm-hmm. And they're like, your company is trash. Blah, blah, blah.
Right,
and they're getting
you charge
so
me $5. Yeah. And you're like,
what's this stupid paper statement fee? Yeah. They're coming in there. One of the most memorable experiences. Mm-hmm. We had a new MSR and I got to watch them, and they had someone come in and they're like, you guys charged me $2 for a paper statement fee, and the MSR is like, what's a paper statement?
I didn't charge you anything.
Yeah, they're like, I didn't do it, but
right. And that's an important thing to remember being an MSR, because do you walk into places and start hollering at the first person you see?
Nope. It's because I've been there.
Yeah.
And getting yelled at it ruins a day. Mm-hmm. It easily can ruin your day. if you don't have the answer.
Yeah.
And it also can make you really, really angry towards specific people. And that's not fair, to anybody. Because somebody can have an off day. And granted, they should never take it out on another person.
Yeah.
If they do, though, having that ownership of saying, I was wrong, and then coming back in, it's a simple forgiveness thing. Everybody has an off day, and it doesn't ruin your life.
100%.
It was just an angry day, and you still have your job. They know what they did was wrong. Everybody walks
Move
away.
on.
Exactly.
Right.
That would be a good life lesson for society as a whole.
Oh, right. Scroll on.
Away,
Just scroll on. Walk past. And that's so funny you say that because with the different companies, especially like with the Perfect RA, sometimes you get a lot of trash talkers out there,
Yes.
and that love to troll and like jump on comments and stuff. Matthew Jarvis is like the most salacious one, right? Like everyone, I'm like, if you don't like what he has to say, don't listen. Don't follow him. Don't read his book. Don't practice his preaching. Like, move on, everyone.
That mute button exists. Yeah. No,
and it is a choice, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like, this is not dictatorship, right? This isn't capitalistic dictatorship. Move on. If you don't like it, go figure it out for yourself. Shut up. Yes.
That was a really nice experience because as I was starting out as an MSR, when I was only focused on the six figures, I wasn't really moving anywhere.
Yeah.
And as soon as I started changing the mindset to provide value based off what you had told me, not but 2 weeks after, I had gotten offered from the chief lending officer to join the lending team. She said, hey, I want you.
Yeah.
And so I got to join that team, and it was...
It was not a 3-cent raise.
No, it was not. It was a 20% increase, which was just by saying, yes, I'm interested. And that was obviously not the norm, but definitely, it was definitely super appreciated and super cool to see.
But you earned it.
Absolutely.
You weren't given it. You found a way to provide value. Other people saw it. They appreciated it, and they increased your compensation.
And money found me.
Money found you.
I got to, and it's ever since experiencing that and having that good experience with providing value, it's kind of just gone up from there and why I'm in that internal compliance control specialist area now.
You're a born compliance officer.
Oh yeah. Providing that value and getting to join that. It's a blast. Where I'm at right now is so much fun. And it's to that point where it's not that first job. So going into work, and I think for me personally, I was thinking about it the other day, and when it comes to hating your first job, you absolutely should. Because it's your job.
You should hate it.
You should hate your job, and you should love your career.
Oh, that's really smart, babe.
Yeah. And
who made you so smart?
I think that was something that I thought about, and it kind of stuck, is while I may not see myself at the bank or financial institution I'm currently at right now, I definitely see it as a career. And because it's a career, I mean, I'm not forcing myself to love what I do. I love everything about it. Going in and constantly learning something new. Yeah. And having the ability to bring up ideas that are seen, and while they may not help, built off of because they're needed, because every single point of view is an open point of view, is amazing. It is so much fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you think you're going to join the firm?
Yes.
Do you?
Ultimately. Yeah, I do.
Yeah?
I think I'm going to join.
Do you feel you've been pressured to join the firm?
No, not at all. I think that people commonly misconstrue pressure with support. I think that growing up, I was given a lot of support, and some people thought of it as pressure, and it's really hard to describe that it's not. Obviously, I can tell you all day that you didn't pressure me into anything, but you're my mom. You're going to ultimately believe what you believe.
Yes.
Because it's an argument at the end of the day. But it was initially an introduction of, what do you want to do? What's your 5-year plan? I don't know what I want to do. And you gave me an ultimatum. You said, hey, well, here's what you can do. If this is something you genuinely want help with, why don't I give you a 50-50? And I said, what would be your 50-50? You said compliance or being a financial officer for the firm. And I think that that was one of the biggest awakening moments for me, and kind of seeing where I want to move forward. Is it sounds like it's two different positions, but realistically there is so much you can do with either one of those.
Endless.
It's endless with money. And you did nothing but help guide me down that path. The entire family did. I was never pushed. I was never urged to join the firm. And if I was taught to tell no. If you did not like the way it worked, you say no. Not because you're trying to tell the family you don't want to be there, but because they need to know, because a path and building that for someone is hard. It is not something that just gets laid out. It's not a day thing. When you ask me every week, it's because you're building that path every week to help guide me down and to help show me where the obstacles are at, so I know where I need to move. And with that, I was able to move to where I am now and kind of set that goal of joining the firm and make it realistic, because I now am starting to learn what I want to do. And with that being compliance, I absolutely see myself either doing the compliance side of the firm or the financial advising. I've gotten to dip my toes in either side of that, and I love both.
Yeah.
So
It's kind of one of those things that, like, we were really struggling, especially because you were going to graduate at age 16, right? You didn't want to go to college.
Yep.
You're way too young for the military, right?
Yep.
And that was a conversation we had too, right? And I told you, you have to go to university because I need an accounting of your time, right? Because if you'd stayed at your dead-end job from 16 to 20, right, it would be harder and harder. And this one thing I was teaching your cousin too, is that you if you leave a job, you got to take a step up. You cannot take a lateral step or a step back. You have to be stepping up, right, to grow. And so, at 16, graduated, didn't want to go to university, and you and I had to sit down and have a reckoning, because, and I think a lot of parents are like, well, you got to figure it out. You got to figure it out. And I'm like, how is a 16-year-old going to figure it out when, one, their brain is not fully developed, and two, for 16 years, you've been telling them everything they need to do every second of the day, And so you don't go from being reminded to brush your teeth to here's my 10-year career plan,
Yeah.
So we sat down and I said, listen, you have unlimited opportunities. You can do anything you want to do, but until you know what you want to do, here's what you're going to go do. Right. And every year we're going to sit down and revisit this right around your birthday. And we're going to say, is this still the path? And if it's not the path, we're going to say, what's the next? What's next? That's a 5-year plan. Right. And saying, okay, you want to deviate, you want to go here instead of there. Great. But let's build that out together. And by golly, it's the same thing we're doing with clients. Why wouldn't we do it with our own kids? Right. And then when you started earning money, the second you start earning money, and not this job where you're making more, but the job where you made hardly anything, right? You had to save money from that. You had to divide your income out. You had to we do the different cash flow buckets, right? You understood what an emergency account was. You had to fully fund that first, right? You had to pay your own bills. And you always felt stressed, like, I don't have enough. And I said, no, but if you can't save $1, you won't save 10, you won't save 1,000, you won't save 100. Right. I mean, and it just kept going like that. And even when you got this new job, we sat down and said, okay, boom, your income has increased. So great. So have these accounts. Right. And so I think, if we come up with action items out of this for the members of the nation that are listening, that are parents or thinking about being parents, or, are influential in young people's lives, is don't let them spiral out. Help them, right? Like, we're planners, and there's no problem we can't solve or develop a plan for, that if we communicate, right, with youth. And so sitting down with your kids and your nieces and your nephews and whoever those young adults are, and saying, let's come up with a plan. You're welcome to deviate. You have unlimited potential, but you have to do this in the next couple of years. And then let's revisit that. And if it deviates, we'll figure it out then, right? And we keep building upon this. 2, I would say surrounding yourself with positive energy. One of the things that we did when you were little was we would have a family computer, and the family computer had to be in the kitchen, and it had to be where the screen was facing out so anyone walking by could see. So you weren't allowed privacy really until he was, in high school level. But I don't know if you remember this, but when you would get up in the morning, get your breakfast, put it on the table, and I would start a TED Talk on YouTube, and I would just leave it going in the background and, go shower, get ready for the day, etc. And then be like, oh, did I leave that running?
Oh, yeah. Every time. You did. Oh, I remember that.
It was the only thing that he was, allowed to listen to, just like Poppy did with me when he drove me to high school all the time in the minivan. He'd have some cassette of some motivational speaker, right? Because I wanted you to be saturated that anything is possible.
Well, and that subtle or action that you took, I mean, it built my brain off of that. So watching those TED Talks, understanding it wasn't only positivity that spread, it was knowledge every single time. And it stuck. Whether I remembered it or not, it was still sitting in the back of my brain.
Yeah.
And it was an everyday thing.
And I love seeing it because when you bring like your friends around the house, you guys are having pizza or beer or whatever, and they'll spout off something, and then I'll hear some Shalansky idiom come out of you, and I'm like, yes, preach. Because I've heard you a few times, what's your 5-year plan? What's your goal? How are you going to get there? What are the steps, right?
Well, and I think it's not to berate my friends or anything.
Yeah.
It's I want to see them grow. Yeah. They're my friends. If they aren't growing with me, then am I really being a good friend? And if I have that knowledge, I should spread it. If you have knowledge, you should absolutely
100%.
be sharing it. You should not hold that to yourself. It doesn't help anybody.
Yeah. You are entrusted by the divine to help others.
Exactly.
You are. Yes. 100%. All right. So actionable advice, sit down with the youngsters, get those plans in motion, help them, guide them, right? Be proactive, saturate them in positivity, different ways of learning, different way of listening, and have dialogue like this. Sit down with your kids. You don't need to be on a podcast to do it. I mean, one of the things I know you recorded with Poppy, and you said, I love doing that. It felt like Sunday night dinner, right? Just me and the old man sitting there talking, right? So have this type of dialogue with your kids, with the people that you love, because we are in financial planning to change lives, but we have to fill our own cups, and we have to change the lives of the people that we love the most and the ones we say we are doing all of this for. So with that, everyone, happy planning. I have a deep regard for you.
And you.
Hold on before we go. Something that you need to know. This isn't tax, legal, or investment advice. That isn't our intent. Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice. Be a better husband, father, mother, and wife.